Hello everyone, and welcome to Etalon. Halloween has rolled around once again. For most, Halloween is a time of falling leaves, warm hearty meals, and the cold air of the oncoming winter. But for us in the Southern Hemisphere, this time of year is wrought with the blossoming of flowers, warm sun, and the abundance of new life. Inspired by this, I wanted to create a spring-themed Halloween doll. And what better to create than Danny from Ari Aster's iconic cult film, Midsommar. This doll is in collaboration with some incredible creators here on YouTube. Within the collaboration, there is Mr. Super Customs, Hexian, Jackie O, H. Ali Crafts, Delightful, Moonlight Jewel, The Dolly Geek, Anastasia Customs, Valkitty's World, Enchantarium, The Doll Fairy, and Krios Workshop. All links to the creators' videos will be in the description box below. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it so much. Like the video if you like it, and comment. I love reading all of your comments. With that all being said, let's get started. For our base, we're going to be going with Laguna from the Monster High range. This doll model, while being blue, is an amazing mold with extremely mildly sculpted features, which gives us great flexibility when it comes to creating different facial expressions without having to do any sanding or sculpting. To get this doll ready for customizing, we need a clean slate. For this, we must remove all the factory hair and paint, as well as remove the head from the body. Using 100% acetone and a cotton swab, I can start to strip away the old face. Once it was all clean, I'll give the doll a spray of Mr. Super Clear Matte Varnish. Once that's all dry, we can start creating. The pencils I'm going to be using are the Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolour pencils. But you're probably thinking, Etalon, what on earth is Midsommar? And who is Danny? To those who are unfamiliar with the film, Midsommar is a thriller from 2019. The story revolves around our protagonist, Danny, her emotionally absent partner, and his friends. In an attempt to mend their relationship, she agrees to join her partner on a trip to Sweden to visit his friend's rural town for their Midsommar festival. Unbeknownst to them, the Midsommar festivities divulge into increasingly strange and increasingly violent rituals and competitions performed by the pagan cult in which they now reside. The film explores themes of loneliness and indoctrination, not only from the voyeuristic look at the indoctrination of the characters, but for us, the viewer, as well. The blinding brightness of the Scandinavian sun, the white clothes of the Haga, the pagan cult, and the blossoming of the flowers is so unusual when placed in the context of a horror or thriller film. It confuses our mind. Happy, singing, smiling people with bright and colourful flowers in their hair gives us a false sense of security and welcome, making us ignore the climactic atrocities that they ultimately inflict on their fellow humans. When I saw the film, I remember sitting there once the film had ended, and even thinking to myself, yeah, I get it, and then immediately smacking myself out of it. No, this is a cult. If you're interested in learning more about the film and its techniques, I would highly recommend checking out Ryan Hollinger's video, Why Midsommar Broke Me, and Acolytes of Horror's video, How Midsommar Brainwashes You. As always, I'll leave links to their YouTube channels and respective videos in the description box below. For my doll, I'll be creating Danny. Something I decided really early on in the creation process was to abandon the idea of a hyper-realistic face-up. What I mean by this is, instead of trying to follow the face of Danny, trying to replicate the face to a T on a more proportioned base, like a Barbie or so, I would instead just go with the flow and do my own style, which can be exaggeratingly out of proportion when you think about a real face. Of course, elephant in the room, Danny's not blue. Something I thought would be a fun creative choice was to use the blue of the base, and through pastels and so very, very many layers, try and change the colour subtly. Danny in the film, before even arriving at the events of the Midsommar festivities, is in the midst of a psychological breakdown. Mental health affects your physical health. Paling and greying of the skin is a general side effect of long-term emotional distress. While of course pushing the grayscale of the skin, I wanted to make sure to also push redness around the eyes, which will be seen in the inner corners, cheeks and brow area. Danny cries a lot in the film. Sounds kind of rude when I say it like that, but she does. When someone cries for a long time, their eyes become puffy and red. So I felt I needed to make sure I was pushing the redness to be sure to represent that. One of the most iconic things of the film is Danny's drug-induced frown. To be a fly on the wall in my workroom would see me constantly looking in the mirror doing this face myself, to study how the face just is. Yes, it looked ridiculous. For the hair, I'm going to be using 100% acrylic yarn. The colour I'm using is this two-toned light and medium blonde mixture. To create the hair fibres for application, I'm going to section the hair in two pieces, brush them out with a pet brush, and later with a hair straightener straighten the fibres down, then gluing the ends to a plastic lid to create wefts. Using craft glue and grabbing those hair fibres, I can press it into the vinyl. This hair will sit outside the hairstyle. Once the loose hairs were dry, I can start applying the wefts that will make up the hairstyle. Here I folded the weft back onto itself, as to hide the glue track, and give the illusion that the hair is coming out of the skin. Once the weft is attached, I like to add just anchor pins to keep the weft nice and in place. There's nothing worse than when you attach hair wefts to the hairline, think it's all well and good, looks great, give it a brush, and woof, the weft just completely unsticks, and your doll has a wonky hairline now. So I like to anchor them down. Once all the wefts are attached, it starts to look something like this. Somewhat of a nitpick, I didn't like how bright the hair was. Danny has blonde hair, but her hair is lighter at the ends and a shade darker or two at the roots, not necessarily giving off the look of regrowth on dyed hair, but more of a natural sun bleaching. To give off that effect, I grabbed some brown soft pastels, a dense brush, and will be applying it into the hairline. Once I was happy with how it was looking, I brushed it through, placed the hair into pigtails, and sprayed it with a mist of hairspray to keep the powder in place. To start with styling, the first thing I'm going to do is razor away all those flyaways along the hairline. To get that look of sweat-dried hair, I brushed through pomade and hairspray. For the hair, I went with a basic milkmaid style. To keep the hair in place, I'm going to sew the style together. Time to flood those eyes with tears. Using Vallejo gloss varnish, I'm going to be applying a thin layer to the eyes, but as well I'll be creating tears. As I said before, I'm not going for realism in this doll. I wanted to make those tears very stylized in the same way that the face is. So these will be some thick tears. Popping the head away to dry, it's time to work on creating some clothes. To absolutely torture myself with this doll, I decided that I wanted to create two outfits, Mayqueen Coronation and Mayqueen Ultimate Supreme, an absolute unit of a dress. Let's get started in creating Mayqueen Coronation. This is actually a relatively simple design, consisting of a short sleeve top, loose pleated skirt, and a painted apron. For the painted pattern of the apron, I mapped out basic symbols that I took from the original design, and also mapped out their position when it's on the dress. It was quite hard to film. Unfortunately, my hand did get in the way for majority of the filming. But with a blue ink marker, I just mapped out the design into the material. For the middle section, I will be going over that with some acrylic paint that will really emphasize the colour. For the shirt, I embroidered the runes into it. While these are Norse runes, they're a fictional presentation of them. This is in an attempt to show how the Hauga are attempting to create their own language. For instance, the rune that looks like the letter R in English, which means Raido, journey. This rune is flipped backwards. Perhaps this is to imply that it's the opposite of a journey. Perhaps it's to mean reside. The second rune, which is an hourglass looking shape, is Drags, which means day or awakening, but flipped 90 degrees in this rune. Perhaps it's to imply an awakening, but the other way, towards the Hauga. We don't really know for certain. I was just particularly quite curious about what I was embroidering into this shirt. For all I know, I could have been embroidering Fu Etelan in Norse, and I would be none the wiser. Time to create May Queen Supreme. The idea was to create this dress as a shell, being able to be freely taken on and off without having to worry about damage. To create this, the first thing I need to create is the shell base. For this, I'm going to make a bootleg looking birdcage petticoat or hoop skirt. I made mine by creating circles of different sizes out of zip ties. To make sure I can open the structure, I sewed in a gate onto the topmost circle. To create this absolute tent of a dress, I had to cut a half circle out of material, 30 centimeters in diameter, with a 2 centimeter diameter circle that will be cut out of the middle. I'll turn in all the sides, sewing around them to ensure the material doesn't fray. Once that was done, I flipped the material inside out, folding it in half and sewing 2/3 of the way up. For the unsewed section, this will be placed along the gate of the petticoat and will be closed with snap buttons. Popping the tent onto the petticoat and anchoring it in place with pins, I'm going to attach the pieces together. What I'm doing here is just sewing along the second circle of the petticoat, but as this is going to be covered later on, it doesn't really need to be perfect. A crown for a queen. Both outfits have very specific crown designs. To create my own crown structure, I'm going to be creating it out of craft foam and zip ties. May Queen Supreme's crown style is a thick panel base with 4 tall, thin vertical structures. May Queen Coronation's crown is the same, but replacing those vertical structures for a bridge. The most important material of this entire creation is flowers. Loads and loads and loads of flowers. For my midsummer creation, I collected dried and plastic flowers. I collected these interior design fake hanging plants that attach to a wall. I went to my local florist and I got these dried salmon-coloured baby's breath flowers. A bushel of yellow and white plastic budded flowers. An olive leaf-like bushel. Grass terrain pieces for mini painting in red, yellow, multicolour yellow and orange, and purple. A whole load of paper roses in a variety of shapes and colours. And finally the culprit of my green-stained hands, fake moss. Looking at the dress, it can be hard to imagine where on earth to start on such an extensively packed structure. How I found worked best was to try and mimic the way that you see wildflowers grow naturally. Starting with the largest pieces that I have, which are the paper roses, I randomly attached them along the dress, making sure to keep them quite spaced. I felt starting off with these larger pieces allows me to focus on the smaller details between those larger pieces. As I said, I based the placement off wildflowers. The uneven, chaotic blooming of flowers doesn't really allow your eyes to focus on anything in particular. You look at the entire structure instead of the individuals. In a meadow, you see some flowers grow above the others, reaching out for that spring sun. I made sure to do the same in my own dress, not being afraid to layer flowers on top of flowers, continually to give off that look. I ended up cutting down so much of the creation of the attachments of the flowers, as it was very repetitive. But ultimately, just the dress base took 4 days on its own to create. It was such an arduous process. For the coronation crown, I ran into a little bit of a dilemma. I had created it just in the same as the dress and the other crown, sat there at my desk and looked at it, and then for some reason the weight balance flung the crown off my hand and it fell right into my coffee. Trying to clean off the coffee, I ran into my bathroom and just put it under a tap, and as I did, it crumbles apart. Of course, I had to use paper flowers, didn't I? I had to start again. Great. But I had run out of most of my flowers. Here I covered the new crown in white plastic flowers and decided to paint them in individually to give off that multicolored look. It took quite a long time, but it did actually work. Once that was all dry, I just had to add the remaining of the flowers that I had on hand. Hopefully it still looks okay. With the last flowers added, it looks like we have our 2 outfits. May Queen Coronation comes with a maid dress, painted apron, flower bib, and flower crown. May Queen Supreme comes with her crown and her absolutely huge tent dress. And it seems like, for this year, our Halloween doll is done. To set the mood, I'm going to read from the Midsommar screenplay, the scene in which these 2 costumes reside, and I hope you like it. Danny, watching the burning house with fraught eyes, is suddenly met with a wave of conflicting emotions. Her expression curdles into one of sheer horror and disgust. Then it becomes one of deep sorrow and shame. Her eyes well with tears. The singing, now harmonized, has risen to an insane operatic pitch. Overcome, Danny buries her face in her hands, breaking into gentle sobs as she begins to walk aimlessly. She's circling the house, pulling at her hair and face in increasing anguish, and the house ever present has become engulfed in raging flames. Danny begins moaning and screaming, her howls almost harmonize with the singing. The fire roars and crackles in the distance. Soon it's uncertain whether Danny is crying or laughing. Her legs become weak as she collapses to her knees. 4 Hagans run into the scene carrying a large chair, Danny's throne. The Hagans lift Danny by her arms and seat her in her throne. They then hoist the chair into the air. Her agony subsides into sudden confusion. What is happening? Where am I? I'm on a chair? I'm being carried? Her expression goes from fear to excitement to confusion. Danny is now being taken over by an invading sense of pride and contentment, soon evolving into manic exhilaration. She has been embraced by a new family. She is queen. She is not alone. A smile finally breaks onto Danny's face. She has surrendered to a joy known only by the insane. She has lost herself completely, and she is finally free. It is horrible, and it is beautiful. Thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it so much. I hope you all have a fantastic Halloween. Let me know what you think of my Midsommar doll in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to check out the amazing creations of the other artists within this collaboration. Links to all of their channels will be in the description box below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you liked it, and comment. I love reading all of your comments. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. It's through your support that I'm able to keep the channel going, so thank you so much. With that all being said, I will see you in the next video. Happy Halloween!